There have been allegations that Fourth Doctor Adventures are mid. Series 14, unfortunately, isn't helping the case to beat those allegations. But there is one huge exception to that. This is our overview of Series 14 of the Fourth Doctor Adventures. We are talking about the Hellwood Inheritance, the Ruins of Kaerula, and The Last Queen of the Nile. Three box sets that came out this year from Big Finish Productions, starring Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, Louise Jameson as Leela, and John Neeson as K9, along with loads of other guest stars. Let's dive into it.
Yes, Hellwood Inheritance, written by Alan Barnes, a story I was quite excited for when we saw the cover revealed, and we're going, "Oh, this looks like proper spooky Tom. This like a nice throwback to early Big Finish with the cover." And the premise for this story should be an absolute banger and a home run for the Fourth Doctor because it's ghosts meets Jurassic Park, as there's this sort of ghost safari park. However, the story just doesn't seem to want to explore that idea because it just burns through the ideas incredibly quickly, and you're left with kind of the least exciting aspects of the story. And I think that the idea and core concept feels so right for the season 15 era, where you sort of have the remnants of the gothic horror of the Hinchcliffe era, which you have with Image of Fendal and Horrorfang Rock, and you get the more sort of comedic aspects within the story, what you get with the Williams era, which this does have, and I think this story is a little bit of a comedy at times rather than your spooky gothic horror adventure.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail bang on the head there. It could have been so much better, but part one, it was so much better. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed part one of this story. I remember messaging you at the time saying, Tom's back. This is a good one. We're on to a winner here. And then it felt like
It
what
fizzled.
should have been the cliffhanger to part three, what the story should have been building to this whole time, instead happened at the end of part one. And then it chooses, like we say, a less interesting direction to go down, sadly. And we just ended up with something that is a bit meh, really. It has its moments, still enjoy part one,
Part
but
three I thought was really good. That felt very sort of Image of the Fendal-esque, I would say, with the scenes with the Doctor, but yeah.
it just doesn't quite come together. I feel like the ghosts aren't really enough of a presence, funnily enough.
Yeah, you've got this sort of creepy little girl, but it's not really a creepy
Feels
little
very
girl.
caricature.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. It doesn't, those moments don't land like they should. And the moments that replaced them just aren't as interesting.
Hmm.
Uh, so next up is the Memory Thieves.
Which is a story all about memory, and it's
Mm,
one
it's
where
very forgettable.
yeah, I mean, again, I feel like this has the same sort of issues that Hellwood has, where it burns through its ideas, but it's this slow burner where there's this whole mystery of this planet where people lose their memory and people have to keep taking these sort of memory supplements so they can stay intact.
Mm.
But you get to sort of, part one feels very much like a traditional part one, and then part two feels like two, three, and four all crammed together, and it's like, I've got 10 minutes to wrap this story up, and it just becomes a bit of a mess, really.
Yeah. To me, it feels like an interesting idea, but done in a very by the numbers manner. It feels like no one's really trying 100% with this one, so why should I?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some good Tom dialogue within it. I think Phil Morine really gets the Fourth Doctor here. I think
Hmm.
the opening sequence in the TARDIS is a lot of fun. And I think there's some really interesting ideas with this sort of whole sort of alien taking over your mind, and that's how it sort of colonizes. That's really interesting in this sort of early days of this colony and the loneliness and isolation. That could have been explored a little bit more, but again, it just sort of is more interested in doing other things.
Hmm. Yeah, the stuff that it does feel very of the era as well. But yeah, like I say, just none of it comes together in an exciting enough manner, to be honest. So those two stories are what comprise the first box set of Series 14, which I think I would say if you're picking these up individually, it's one you can skip, to be honest. Yeah. So that takes us to the next set, which is the Ruins of Kaerula, which is interesting in that it is three two-parters, but two of these two-parters are very strongly linked, but they're done the other way around this time. You've got a story set in the future of this planet called Kaerula, where there's this huge catastrophe that has happened, and then you get to go back in time in the next story to see how this catastrophe took place. And that's definitely an interesting idea for a set of stories there, isn't it? A different way of doing a two-parter of sorts.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of what they used to do in the Fourth Doctor adventures, like the Legacy of Death and the Paradox Planet. It's a bit like that early Fourth Doctor format where they sort of experiment with sort of stuff like that. I think the main exciting thing for it is the concept of it, which it does feel quite 70s with this massive big drill. But I'm
Mm.
I'm I'm gonna be honest. I feel like the people on the Memory Thieves planet where I'm struggling to remember this one.
Yeah, it doesn't quite land as hard as it perhaps could, but one thing that does work really well about these two stories is the dialogue between the Fourth Doctor, Leela, and K9. It bounces off all three of them really well. And there's so many great moments. It feels so true to what we had at the time between them. The dynamic between the Doctor and K9 is brilliant. There's the usual abuse there of sorts. It's, yeah, wonderful stuff. It really did get me cackling at times. And I think, yeah, it made the story that little bit more enjoyable, really. It's got, like I said, it's got some interesting ideas. I think the first story, The Remains of Kaerula, does a pretty good job. That got more interesting as it went along. And then when you go back in time with The Ruins of Kaerula, it throws in this other menace that feels a bit unnecessary, feels like it's just there to throw in a bit of jeopardy for the characters and doesn't really add a whole lot to the overall story that both parts are trying to tell. And I also think, certain parts of it complicate its message somewhat about, initially in part one, or not part, I say part one, the first story, The Remains of Kaerula. It's very much about the people who have decimated this planet are coming forward to the future. Uh, and so, the people who were left behind and had to actually survive that see these people as the mega rich. They're the ones who funded the destruction, the ones who could afford to escape. And it sort of raises that question of should there be repercussions there? And certainly the way that that plays out across the second story, it sort of removes some of that grit that was initially had in that discussion, which I think a little bit of a shame there. But nevertheless, it was an interesting concept to explore while it was exploring it.
I think the main story we were looking forward to in this box set was the Fourth Doctor, Leela meeting the Brigadier, not in the short trips, but full cast adventure, and it's one of the early performances by John Coleshaw as the Brigadier in The Cry of the Banshee, which is oddly referenced in sort of the Tim Foley little universe he's created in Autumn Infinity, where, the Brigadier mentions the last time I went in your TARDIS, I was zapped off to Jupiter. This is where we have the Brigadier and the Fourth Doctor and Leela in Jupiter.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's funny to think that that's now 3 years old.
Autumn Infinity,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's just a funny way of how far ahead they record a lot of
Yeah.
Fourth Doctor stories. And this isn't even the first one that John Coleshaw recorded. We'll get to that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get
But yeah,
there.
it's the first one chronologically for the Brigadier and Leela. So it very much puts those two characters center stage and is exploring their dynamic of both wanting to be the Doctor's best friend, really.
Hmm.
And I think the mystery that's going on around that is interesting enough. But then, again, similar to what we've had before, once the mystery is revealed, it becomes a bit of a runaround.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Banshees is such a good idea for like the Fourth Doctor era, but
Hmm.
because it's on Jupiter, it doesn't kind of seem to hit as hard as it should do, really. Because I think in a way you kind of want your traditional meat and potatoes Doctor Who story with it.
Yeah. I respect it when Doctor Who turns around and says, "No, you're not getting your meat and potatoes. We're doing something different.
Yeah,
Come on, come out of your comfort zone. Try something new for once." But yeah, yeah, it just didn't quite land for me at the end of it.
it felt a little bit like the Fourth Doctor does boom with like the Banshees being this sort of war technology, being sold off and that kind of thing. It felt very similar
Yeah,
to
it's got
Boom in a
that
way.
message about it, hasn't it?
Yeah, and part of me feels like it's referencing Invasion of the Cat People by Gary Russell with Tom going about the pussy invasion, which was a particular highlight of this adventure for me.
Like, I can't think why.
Yeah, so that's one memory of what I can remember about this series. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, John Coleshaw is always brilliant as the Brigadier. Even here in his earlier days, he's doing
Mm.
so well. And, you really do feel like this would have been the dynamic for the Doctor and Leela on TV. They spark off each other
Yeah,
nicely.
two
Sort of have
soldiers
some
in a way.
antagonism there. Yeah.
Yeah, two
Then,
warriors.
as you'd expect, they find some common ground. And so, yeah, with that and with Ruins and Remains of Kaerula, that makes up the second set of this series. Do you feel like it's more worth people's time than the first set?
Uh, I, I feel like it's kind of similar in as Hellwood really. Like I feel like
Hmm.
they're kind of on the same level.
Yeah, they sort of balance out in the end. Hmm. So,
Um,
what set should people get from this series then? If you can only choose one, what should it
well, I would have to bring this in, which is the last queen of the Nile.
be? Yes, and we will get there. But first, we will talk about Conspiracy of Silence, which also comes in this set. The two-part that kicks it off, a very different two-part as well, I must say.
Yes.
Yeah, as it features, as you might imagine, the silence from the new series.
Who
And
are they?
indeed,
Not to do that joke.
yeah, do we want to do another joke about a story being forgettable?
I can actually remember this one.
Yeah, funnily enough. Yeah, it's exploring them and yeah,
Oil rig. So it's very,
yeah.
I guess, Terror of the Zygons, but we're exploring more of that. And part one is interestingly structured, isn't it? Because it's quite a short
The whole
episode.
yeah, the whole story's pretty goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a hard one to sort of talk about, I feel, without sort of
Hmm.
ruining the fun of it.
It's got a good mystery, and then again, once the mystery's revealed, you're sort of over the gimmick by about halfway through part two. I think.
Hmm.
I think you can see the gimmick coming during part one. You can appreciate what the gimmick's doing. You then get tired of the gimmick.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting one to think about, and I can appreciate it, but I don't know if I enjoyed it enough.
I mean, I had a good time with what it was offering. I think with
Hmm.
Fourth Doctor and the Silence seemed like a good little match, really. And yeah, I think Big Finish have done great stuff with the Silence, and I think this again is a solid one. But like you say, it's one of those things where once you get what the story's going for, you kind of in a little bit sort of clock watching with
Hmm.
it, really.
Yeah, you're sort of waiting for your answers by the end of the story. But I will say, good atmosphere for this.
Yes.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, setting someone on an oil rig just works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's that isolated setting. Yeah, it just works where anything can happen
Yeah.
on there.
And now, the moment we've certainly been waiting for, the story we definitely want to talk about from the series, the one that is not meh in the slightest, the last
It's
queen
S
of
tier.
the Nile. Yeah. David K. Barnes has written a pure historical for the Fourth Doctor, Leela, and K9. Yes, K9, the robot dog, is very much in the thick of the action in this historical epic, really. It does
Yeah.
have the feel of those grand films from like the early days of Hollywood, like Cleopatra. it feels like it's capturing that vibe in the writing and also in the soundscape. I think some of the crowd scenes felt more filled out than they usually would in the Big Finish. It feels like this is Big Finish firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to your point, it's the Fourth Doctor, Leela, and K9 in historical, which on paper you just don't think that would never work. That's not possible at all with
Especially
this
as a
TARDIS team.
finale.
Yeah, and what you get here with this story is it starts off quite Marco Polo with Mark Antony taking the TARDIS as a gift for Cleopatra. By the end of it, you end up with something like the massacre with it. So it's
Hmm.
wonderfully crafted.
It's a true Shakespearean tragedy, isn't it?
It really is, and I
What?
think how it utilizes our characters within this, where you have Leela becoming Cleopatra's bodyguard, and then you
Hmm.
have K9 becoming Cleopatra's sort of oracle.
Or, yeah. And the
Um,
Doctor becoming Mark Antony's jester at one point.
yeah, and I think it uses K9 to their advantage with the story because K9's very logical. In fact, going actually, you're gonna die, and that causes conflict and drama for the Doctor and Leela. Going, look, you shut up, K9.
Hmm.
You're getting us into trouble here. Because you've got the imminent sort of forces of Octavian coming in. It's
I
just
love him as a looming threat in the
yeah,
background. I think, yeah, there's a brilliant performance there from Blake Ritson. And, he doesn't get too much, but what he does get, he does brilliantly with.
hmm. Yeah, it's a great sort of yeah, and just those last sort of moments of part four, everything sort of coming together. I think that this there feels like a nice cohesion with the Fourth Doctor Big Finish stuff because it references Wrath of the Icena with Boudica. You don't
Mm,
need to listen to that to enjoy this, but I like that there's that reference to it that Leela's taking on the lessons she's learned from that adventure and putting them into practice here.
yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, speaking of Leela, she gets some brilliant moments in this one as she is caught up in this tragedy, particularly towards the end. I think that final twist involving her is chef's kiss.
Oh
It's
yeah,
so beautiful, it's so poetic, and then
with the
there's
snake.
such yeah, there's such a cathartic moment after that in TARDIS between the Doctor and Leela. I mean, spoiler alert, they get out alive. Who would have
Yeah,
thought it?
well, yeah.
But yeah, it's this wonderful telling of this tragedy of, what is supposedly one of history's great romances. And I think it's wonderful how real it makes that romance. It's not all played up and, you know,
Yeah.
perfect. There are flaws there, but there is love regardless. And it's a brilliant exploration of that. And yeah, I think it's got a surprising amount of depth to it while also having a good amount of action and
Fun.
fun as well. You've got the laughs, you've got the tearjerker moments. It has so much going for it. I think, yeah, it's
I
one
think
of the best
because
stories of the year.
yeah, I have to agree. I think it's definitely in the top five of this year. And I think because we don't get many pure historicals on Big Finish now.
Particularly not for the Fourth Doctor. This is only the second one he's had.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes this rather special and stand out. And
Mm,
I think with what the story is telling it, yeah, it just hits on everything and you just go, yeah, this is why Big Finish is brilliant.
yeah. Like I say, particularly, you look at some of the recent um, stories set in history that we've had. And I mean, if you go back and watch some of our reviews, you may notice a trend of us saying, there's such an interesting period of history here. Why are we throwing alien menaces into this that then sort of distract from that a bit?
The true
And
history and tragedy of
yeah,
history, yeah.
yeah, there's a couple of historicals. I mean, from the last series of the Fourth Doctor Adventures, Facing the Storm, I think that's one that would have
Yeah.
been better off as a pure historical. So it's nice to, I mean, I say feel like our criticism's been heard. It's not because this was written
Yeah.
long before we made those criticisms, but nevertheless, it does feel like this is the right direction to push in. Not everything has to be a pseudo historical. Sometimes, if you've got an interesting enough period of history, that is enough of a story to tell there. And in many ways, it feels more dangerous.
Mm.
The threat is real to us. And I think these characters feel much more trapped, particularly in this story. You're wondering, how are they going to get out of this? Not because, there's this intense lock that has a billion combinations on it that the Doctor can't crack. It's because he's locked up by this very human uh, leader whose mood can change like the wind and could have him killed at any moment. So
And
he's
they're
treading
locked.
on eggshells there, and that's so much more interesting.
Yeah, and they're locked in the event of history that if things can get a little bit blurry with the accounts of this as well. So that makes it even more, they're more tentative with what's going on around them, really.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff, this one. It all comes together so nicely. And yeah, it almost makes listening to the rest of the series worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it ends on a high, and
Yeah.
that's all we can really ask for, really. And I think this is what a box set. If you are to pick up anything from Series 14, the Fourth Doctor, this
Make
is
sure
the
it's this
box set.
one.
This is the box set to get.
Yeah. The Last Queen of the Nile. Brilliant stuff. One of the highlights of the year. Roll on Series 15 of the Fourth Doctor Adventures. Let's see if we're having the same conversations again this time next year.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, were we too harsh on the Fourth Doctor Adventures? Were we too lenient on the Fourth Doctor Adventures? I know this range has its haters. I feel like for us, it's a comfort range.
it's
Even when
Tom. We
we can
love
admit it's
Tom.
weird, we feel comforted by it. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on Fourth Doctor Adventures as a whole, this series in particular, and in particular, The Last Queen of the Nile. I want to know, did you love it as much as us? Please share all your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, Duggan.
Bye bye, Cleopatra. Oh, what a woman.
Oh, what a on Mark Antony. What
Oh,
a man.
what a man, what a man, what a
What a
mighty
mighty
good,
fine
good man.
man.
Yes. Bye bye.